Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and tried not to show his anger. The alien council members looked down at him from their high seats like he was some kind of bug they found in their garden. 3 years of meetings. 3 years of trying to prove that humans could be trusted, and still they treated him like dirt. The Valari representative spoke first. His voice sounded like wind through glass, cold and sharp. "Human Morrison, your species continues to disappoint us. Your people fight wars even now on your home planet. How can we trust creatures who cannot stop killing each other?" Jake kept his hands flat on the table. He had learned that showing any sign of anger made things worse with these aliens. "Ambassador, those conflicts are small. Most of our world lives in peace now. We have come far in just 50 years. The insect-like Zephyrin clicked its mandibles together. When it spoke, the translation device made it sound like grinding metal. "Far? You call this progress? Your entertainment shows violence. Your sports involve hitting each other. Even your children play war games. You are a species born from violence." Captain Lisa Hayes stood behind Jake in her dress uniform. She commanded the UES Harmony, the only human ship allowed in this sector of space. The ship carried no real weapons, just basic shields and communication equipment. The aliens had made sure of that when they wrote the rules for diplomatic visits. Jake tried, again. "We understand your concerns. That is why we have worked so hard to change. We have followed every rule you gave us. We have limited our military. We have opened our planet to your inspectors. What more can we do to prove we want peace?" The tall, gray-skinned Alteran leader leaned forward. "You can accept our offer of help. The behavioral modification process has worked for many species. It removes the violent impulses that make your kind so dangerous. You would still be human, but you would be better humans." Lisa felt her jaw tighten. She had read the reports about this process. The aliens called it help, but the species who went through it came out different. They became quiet, obedient, almost like robots. They followed orders without question and never caused problems. They also never created anything new or explored beyond their own worlds. Jake shook his head slowly. "We appreciate the offer, but we believe we can change on our own. We just need more time." The Valari made a sound like a sigh. "Time? Your species has had thousands of years. You have made weapons that can destroy your entire planet. You have fought wars that killed millions. This is what you call progress?" Dr. Nathan Brooks sat in the observation section, taking notes on his tablet. He was Earth's top expert on alien cultures, and something about this whole meeting bothered him. He had spent months studying the records of other species who had joined the Confederation. Many of them had the same conversation with these same alien leaders. But some species were missing from the current records. He had found old files that mentioned them, but when he asked about these missing races, the aliens always gave the same answer. They had chosen isolation. They had decided to stay on their homeworlds and avoid contact with the galaxy. Nathan found this hard to believe. Every species he studied showed curiosity about other worlds. It seemed strange that so many would just give up exploring space and meeting new races. He had asked to visit some of these isolated worlds, but his requests were always denied. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. The aliens asked the same questions they always asked. Jake gave the same answers he always gave. Nothing changed. Finally, the council leader called for a break. "We will discuss your request among ourselves. Please wait outside." Jake and his team left the chamber and walked into the hallway. The walls were covered with pictures of different alien species, all looking happy and peaceful. Lisa noticed that some of the pictures looked older than others, and some faces she had seen in Nathan's research files were not on the wall anymore. "This is going nowhere," Lisa whispered to Jake. "They have already made up their minds about us." Nathan joined them, still looking at his tablet. "I think there is something they are not telling us. I have been comparing population records from different time periods. Some species show huge drops in numbers, but there is no explanation for why." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. "What are you thinking?" "I think we need to find out what really happened to those missing species. the ones who supposedly chose isolation. I do not believe that story. Lisa looked around to make sure no aliens were listening. How do we do that? They will not let us visit those worlds. Nathan smiled for the first time in weeks. They will not let us visit officially, but there might be other ways to get information. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the chamber doors opened again. The council leader appeared and motioned for them to return. We have reached a decision, the Alteran said as they took their seats. We will give humanity one final chance to prove they can be peaceful members of our confederation. Jake felt a small hope rise in his chest. What do you need us to do? You will return to Earth and convince your leaders to accept the behavioral modification process. Your entire species will undergo the treatment. This will remove your violent nature and allow you to join us as full members. The hope died quickly. And if we refuse? The Valari's voice became even colder. Then you will be declared a threat to galactic peace. You will be restricted to your solar system permanently. Any attempt to leave will be considered an act of war. Jake looked at Lisa and Nathan. He could see the same thought in their eyes. This was not really a choice at all. How long do we have to decide? 30 Earth days. Choose wisely, Human Morrison. This offer will not be made again. As they left the council chamber, Jake wondered if they were walking into a trap that had been set long before humans ever reached the stars. Commander Alex Turner crouched behind the broken wall and tried not to breathe too loud. His Black Ops team had been on Kepler 7 for 3 days, and what they found made his stomach turn. The planet was supposed to be empty, just another world that nobody wanted, but the orbital scans had lied. "Boss, you need to see this," whispered Sergeant Mike Collins from across the ruined street. He was pointing at something half buried in the rubble. Alex crawled over, keeping low. What Mike had found was a skull, but not human. It was long and narrow with 4 eye sockets. Alex recognized it from the old files that Nathan Brooks had shown him. This was a Kytheran skull. The Kytherans were one of the missing species that had supposedly chosen isolation 50 years ago. "There are more over here," called out Corporal Jenny Martinez from inside what used to be a building. "Lots more." Alex and his team spent the next 6 hours digging through the ruins. They found bones from at least 3 different alien species. All of them were on Nathan's list of missing races. All of them had supposedly decided to live alone and avoid the galaxy. But this was not isolation. This was slaughter. The burn marks on the buildings told the real story. These had come from orbital weapons, the kind that melted metal and turned stone to glass. The kind that left nothing alive on a planet's surface. "Take pictures of everything," Alex ordered. "Command needs to see this." Tony Rivera, the team's tech specialist, was scanning the area with his equipment. "Commander, I am picking up energy readings from underground. There might be some kind of bunker system down there." They found the entrance hidden under a collapsed building. The metal door was still sealed, but their cutting tools made quick work of it. Inside, the bunker was dark and cold, but their lights showed walls covered with symbols and pictures. "Can anyone read this?" Alex asked. Jenny had studied alien languages at the academy. She pointed her light at one section of the wall. "This part talks about a choice, something about joining or dying. The symbols are old, but I think it says they refused to become slaves. They went deeper into the bunker. In the last room they found what they were looking for. A recording device sat on a metal table, still working after all these years." Tony connected his translator to it and played the message. The voice that came out was weak and scared. It spoke in the Kytheran language, but the translator turned it into English. "This is Elder Voss of the Kytheran Council. If anyone finds this message, know the truth about the Galactic Confederation. They came to us with smiles and promises of peace. They said they wanted to help us become better, but their help was a lie." The recording continued. "They demanded we submit to their behavioral modification process. They said it would make us peaceful and happy, but we learned the truth from other species who had undergone the treatment. It does not make you peaceful. It makes you empty. It removes your will to think for yourself. You become like a machine that only follows orders." Alex felt his blood Go cold. This was exactly what they were trying to do to humanity. When we refused, they gave us an ultimatum. Submit or be declared enemies of galactic peace. We chose to remain free. 3 days later, their fleet arrived. They did not try to capture us or give us another chance. They simply began destroying everything on our planet's surface. The voice grew weaker. We built these bunkers thinking we could wait them out, but they are patient. They have cut off all our supplies and they wait. They will not leave until every one of us is dead. This is what happens to species who say no to the Confederation. We are not the first, and we will not be the last. The recording ended with the sound of explosions getting closer. Alex and his team sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Tony spoke up. How many species do you think they have done this to? Nathan's research showed at least 12 missing races in the last 200 years, Alex replied. All of them supposedly chose isolation right after meeting with the Confederation Council. They spent 2 more days on Kepler-7, documenting everything they could find. Mass graves, destroyed cities, evidence of a desperate final battle. The Catharans had fought hard, but they never had a chance against 12 different alien fleets working together. On the flight back to Earth, Alex sent an encrypted message to President Helen Carter. The Confederation is not what they pretend to be. They are killers who destroy anyone who will not become their slaves. Humanity is next on their list. President Carter received the message in her private office 3 hours before the deadline expired. She called an emergency meeting with Admiral Rick Stone, the head of Earth's defense forces. How bad is it? She asked after reading Alex's full report. Admiral Stone looked at the pictures from Kepler-7 and shook his head. We have maybe 200 ships that could fight in space. Most of them are patrol vessels and cargo haulers with basic weapons. The Confederation has over 3,000 warships, all with technology centuries ahead of ours. So we cannot win a straight fight? Not even close. If they decide to do to us what they did to the Kitharans, Earth will be a dead world in a week. President Carter walked to her window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people were going about their daily lives, not knowing that their entire species might be wiped out within days. What are our options? She asked. We can surrender and accept their behavioral modification. Our people would live, but they would not really be human anymore. Or we can refuse and hope we can make them pay a price for destroying us. Is there a third option? Admiral Stone was quiet for a long moment. There might be, but it would mean becoming something we swore we would never be again. Before President Carter could ask what he meant, alarms began ringing throughout the building. A voice came over the intercom system. Madam President, please report to the Situation Room immediately. We have multiple unknown contacts entering the solar system. The Confederation fleet had arrived early, the ultimatum was over, and humanity's real test was about to begin. President Helen Carter stood in the Situation Room and watched the screens showing space around Earth. 3,000 alien ships had arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the planet. They were close enough to destroy every city on Earth, but far enough away to avoid any weapons humanity might have. Admiral Rick Stone pointed at the largest ship on the screen. That is their command vessel. It is 10 times bigger than our largest ship. They are not taking any chances with us. The communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through was the same cold Valari tone that Jake Morrison had heard in the council chamber. People of Earth, this is Fleet Commander Xeris of the Galactic Confederation. You have refused our generous offer of behavioral modification. You have chosen to remain violent and dangerous. Therefore, you will be removed from the galaxy, President. Carter walked to the communication panel. This is President Carter of Earth. We are willing to discuss terms for peace. There are no terms, the alien voice replied. You had your chance for peace. Now you will learn what happens to species who threaten galactic stability. You have 1 hour to prepare yourselves. The communication ended. The Situation Room fell silent, except for the humming of computers and the sound of people breathing hard. 1 hour, Admiral Stone said quietly. They are not even going to give us time to say goodbye. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. Some looked scared, others looked angry, but all of them looked defeated. They had all accepted that humanity was about to die. "Get me a direct line to every human on Earth," she said finally. "Madam President?" her communications officer asked. "If we are going to die, we are going to die as humans, not as the weak creatures they think we are." 10 minutes later, every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth showed the same image. President Carter sitting at her desk in the Oval Office looking directly into the camera. Her expression was not the face of a defeated leader. It was the face of someone who had made a decision. "My fellow humans," she began. "In 1 hour, the aliens in orbit around our planet will begin destroying our world. They believe we are too violent to exist in their peaceful galaxy. They have given us the choice to become their slaves or die as free people." She paused and took a deep breath. "They have made one terrible mistake. They think we have been showing them our true nature these past 3 years. They think the diplomatic missions, the peace talks, the attempts to prove we could be civilized were all we had to offer. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In homes and offices, on streets and in schools, every human was hearing the same words. They were wrong," President Carter continued. "We were not being peaceful because we are weak. We were being peaceful because we were trying to be better than what we used to be. We were trying to rise above our nature, not because we had to, but because we wanted to." Dr. Amanda Foster sat in her underground laboratory and smiled for the first time in months. She had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Her team had been preparing for the day when humanity would have to stop pretending to be harmless. "For centuries, we humans have fought wars against each other," the president continued. "We have created weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We have perfected the art of killing, but we chose to put those weapons away. We chose to make peace with our enemies. We chose to be better." Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker stood with his special operations team in their hidden base. They were not regular soldiers. They were the ones who had volunteered for the missions that no civilized species would ever consider. They were the monsters that humanity kept locked away. "The aliens think our violence makes us primitive," President Carter said. "They do not understand that our violence is what kept us alive for thousands of years. Every predator that tried to eat us, we killed. Every disease that tried to destroy us, we fought. Every enemy that tried to conquer us, we defeated." Captain Danny Rodriguez sat in the cockpit of his ship, which was not really a ship anymore. It was a weapon designed to look like a cargo hauler. Hidden throughout the solar system were hundreds of similar vessels, all disguised as civilian craft. "They think we are dangerous because we fight each other," the president continued. "But they do not realize that fighting each other made us stronger. Every war taught us new ways to kill. Every battle showed us how to survive. Every defeat taught us how to come back harder." Around the galaxy, other species were watching the SAO broadcast. Some of them remembered the fear they had felt when they first met humans. Others remembered stories their ancestors had told about the nightmares that lived on the third planet of a small yellow star. "We tried to be the species you wanted us to be," President Carter said, looking directly into the camera as if she could see the alien fleet commanders. "We tried to be peaceful and civilized. We followed your rules and accepted your restrictions. We let you think we were harmless." She stood up from her desk and walked closer to the camera. "But you made a choice for us. You decided that we should die rather than remain free. You took away our option to be peaceful." The countdown timer on the Situation Room wall showed 30 minutes remaining. "So now you will see what we really are when we stop trying to be better than our nature. You will learn why every species in our galaxy's history that tried to destroy us ended up extinct. You will discover what real monsters look like when they stop pretending to be tame." She returned to her desk and sat down. "You wanted to see our true nature? You are about to get your wish. But remember, you chose this. We gave you every chance to let us remain peaceful. You decided that was not good enough." The broadcast ended. Around the world, humans began moving with purpose. Military bases that had been shut down for years suddenly came alive. Weapons that had been mothballed were brought back online. Soldiers who had been told to forget their most dangerous training suddenly remembered everything. In space, the alien fleet waited. They had destroyed 12 species before humanity. Each time it had been quick and clean. The species had either submitted or died without much of a fight. They expected the same from the humans. After all, how dangerous could a primitive species really be? They were about to find out. Fleet Commander Xerus watched the human broadcast from his command ship and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Unease. In all his years of bringing order to the galaxy, no species had ever spoken to the Confederation like that. Most begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. The humans had done neither. "Sir, we are receiving multiple energy signatures from the planet's surface," his tactical officer reported. "It appears they are powering up weapon systems we did not know they had." Xerus dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "Primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Begin the bombardment as planned." The first wave of Confederation ships moved into position above Earth's major cities. They had done this same operation 11 times before. It was always over quickly. Captain Danny Rodriguez sat in his modified cargo ship and watched the alien vessels approach. His ship looked like a simple freight hauler, but appearances could be deceiving. 3 years ago, Dr. Amanda Foster had approached him with a question that changed everything. "What if we stopped fighting fair?" she had asked. Now he knew the answer. "All units, this is Cargo 1. He spoke into his communication system. "Execute. Protocol Madman." Around the solar system, 200 ships that looked like civilian vessels suddenly dropped their disguises. They were not cargo haulers or passenger transports. They were weapons built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. Danny's ship accelerated toward the nearest Confederation cruiser. The aliens probably thought he was trying to escape. They were wrong. He was not running away from them. He was running toward them. The alien cruiser's weapons began firing at Danny's ship. The energy beams tore through his hull and set fires throughout his vessel. A civilized species would have retreated or surrendered. Danny pushed his engines to maximum power and aimed for the alien ship's bridge. "This is for every species you murdered," he said as his ship collided with the Confederation vessel. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth's surface. The alien fleet suddenly realized that the humans were not trying to fight them in space. They were trying to kill them. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker watched the first exchange from his position on the lunar surface. Hidden bases throughout the solar system came alive as humans implemented tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. "All teams, remember your training," Steve broadcast to his Special Operations Forces. "We are not soldiers anymore. We are predators." The Confederation had expected orbital bombardment to be safe and clean. They had not expected the humans to turn asteroids into guided missiles. They had not expected human ships to be filled with explosives and launched like bullets. They had not expected every piece of space debris to suddenly become a weapon. Admiral Rick Stone commanded the defense from a bunker deep underground. His strategy was simple and brutal. If the aliens wanted to destroy humanity, they would pay a price that would make other species think twice about threatening Earth. "Deploy the Reaper swarms," he ordered. Thousands of small drones launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Each drone was barely larger than a human fist, but they carried enough explosive to cripple a ship. The Confederation's sensors had trouble tracking them because they were designed to look like space junk. Fleet Commander Xerus watched in horror as his perfectly organized formation turned into chaos. Human weapons did not follow any logical pattern. Some ships seemed to be attacking with suicidal fury, while others used tactics that violated every principle of honorable combat. "Sir, the humans are using their own wounded ships as weapons," his tactical officer reported. "They are ramming damaged vessels into our formation." "That is impossible," Xerus replied. "No species would sacrifice their own people like that." But the evidence was right in front of him. Human ships that should have retreated were instead diving into his fleet like guided missiles. Human pilots who should have ejected were staying with their vessels to ensure maximum damage. Major Kelly Wright led the ground forces preparing for alien landing parties. She had studied every human war in history and learned one important lesson. Humans were at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. "They want to see monsters. she told her troops. Let us show them what our ancestors did to survive on this planet for millions of years. The alien ground forces expected to face an organized military. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species. Human civilians had not evacuated the cities. They had turned every building into a fortress and every street into a killing zone. Children threw homemade explosives from rooftops. Elderly people operated sniper rifles from hospital windows. Even wounded humans continued fighting until they drew their last breath. The Confederation forces had advanced weapons and armor, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the rules of war. Humans used their own wounded as bait to lure aliens into traps. They converted schools into ammunition factories and turned playgrounds into minefields. Colonel Ben Murphy coordinated the resistance from the ruins of Washington, D.C. The aliens had destroyed most of the government buildings, but the humans kept fighting from the rubble. Every pile of debris became a fighting position. Every crater became a bunker. They think destroying our cities will break our spirit, he told his fighters. They do not understand that we built these cities on the bones of our enemies. We can build them again. The battle raged for 6 months. The Confederation lost more ships in the first week of fighting than they had lost in the previous century of peacekeeping operations. Their ground forces found themselves trapped in urban warfare against an enemy that had no concept of civilian casualties because every human was a combatant. Fleet Commander Xeris sent increasingly desperate reports to the Confederation Council. The humans were not fighting like any species they had encountered before. They used biological weapons, chemical attacks, and tactics that made seasoned warriors physically ill. They are barbarians, he reported. They poison their own water supplies to deny them to us. They use their own dead as weapons. They fight with a savagery that defies belief. But the humans were not savages. They were a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless predators by being more vicious than anything that tried to kill them. They had learned to be civilized, but they had never forgotten how to be deadly. As the first year of war ended, the Confederation fleet had been reduced to half its original size. The aliens controlled none of Earth's surface and had lost the wise initiative in space. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy that became more dangerous the longer the fight continued. In his private quarters, Fleet Commander Xeris made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. He opened a communication channel to the Confederation Council and spoke words that no military commander had ever uttered before. We cannot win this war. The humans are not like other species. We should consider negotiating a ceasefire. The response from the council was immediate and angry. Impossible. Complete the mission or face court-martial. Xeris closed the communication and looked out at the stars. He had a choice to make, and he knew that the future of galactic civilization might depend on it. 18 months after the first shots were fired, Fleet Commander Xeris made a decision that saved his life and doomed his career. He sent a message to Earth requesting a ceasefire. The Confederation Council called him a coward and a traitor, but Xeris no longer cared about their opinions. He had watched the humans turn space warfare into something that gave him nightmares. They did not just fight to win battles, they fought to make sure their enemies would never want to fight them again. President Helen Carter received the message in her bunker beneath the ruins of Denver. The city above had been destroyed in the first week of fighting, but the government had kept working from underground facilities that the aliens could not find. "They want to talk?" she asked Admiral Rick Stone, who looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 18 months. "Their fleet commander does," Stone replied, "but we do not know if the Confederation Council agrees with him." Carter looked at the casualty reports on her desk. 2 billion humans were dead. Entire cities had been turned to glass, but the aliens had paid a price that shocked the galaxy. They had lost over half their fleet and all of their ground forces. "Set up the meeting," she said, "but make sure they understand that we are not surrendering." The meeting took place on a neutral space station that had been abandoned during the war. Ambassador Jake Morrison, who had survived the destruction of the diplomatic corps, sat across from Fleet Commander Xeris. Both men looked tired and older than their years. Your species cannot continue this war, Zira said without introduction. You have lost too many people. Jake leaned back in his chair. Commander, let me tell you something about humans. We have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to take losses and keep fighting. The question is, can your people? Xeris was quiet for a long moment. My fleet is in full retreat. Half of my ships are destroyed or damaged beyond repair. My ground forces are gone. The Confederation has ordered me to request reinforcements, but I will not send more of my people to die in this madness. Then what do you propose? A ceasefire. Both sides stop fighting and return to their territories. Jake shook his head. Not good enough. Your people came here to exterminate us. You destroyed our cities and killed our children. A ceasefire just gives you time to build more ships and try again. Then what do you want? Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Unconditional surrender. Your fleet leaves our solar system and never returns. The Confederation dissolves its military forces and agrees to leave all species alone unless they ask for help. Xeris laughed bitterly. Impossible, the Council will never agree to those terms. Then the war continues. But let me make something clear, Commander. We are not the same species that asked nicely to join your Confederation 3 years ago. We have remembered what we really are, and what we are is the most dangerous predator this galaxy has ever seen. Jake stood up and walked to the window, showing the stars. Do you know why humans conquered every environment on our planet? Because we do not just adapt to survive. We adapt to dominate. You gave us 18 months to adapt to space warfare. How do you think that worked out for you? Over the following weeks, news of the war spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been forced to undergo behavioral modification began asking questions about their treatment. Races that had been considering joining the Confederation suddenly changed their minds. General Kate Sullivan led the final human offensive against the Confederation capital world. Her fleet was smaller than what the aliens originally brought to Earth, but it was crewed by humans who had learned to fight without limits. The capital world's defenses had been designed to stop civilized attackers. They were not prepared for humans who turned their own ships into guided missiles and used biological weapons without hesitation. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Confederation Council was dead and their capital city was in ruins. President Carter established the new galactic order from the ruins of the Confederation Parliament. The remaining alien species gathered to hear humanity's terms for peace. We did not want this war, she began, speaking to representatives from dozens of worlds. We tried to join your Confederation as peaceful members. You decided that was not acceptable. She looked out at the alien faces, many showing fear for the first time in centuries. So let me make the new rules clear. Humanity will leave you alone if you leave us alone. We will trade with you if you want to trade. We will help you if you ask for help. But we will never again pretend to be harmless. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood beside her. His diplomatic days were over, but he had one more message to deliver. Every species in this galaxy now has a choice. You can live in peace with your neighbors, or you can try to conquer them. But if you choose conquest, you will have to deal with us. Dr. Amanda Foster released her final report on human military capabilities to every species in the galaxy. It was not a threat, but a statement of fact. Humans had developed weapons and tactics that could destroy entire star systems. More importantly, they had proven they would use them when threatened. The galaxy entered a new age of peace, but it was not the enforced peace of the Confederation. It was the peace that comes when everyone knows the price of starting a war. Years later, alien children would ask their parents about the species that lived on the small blue planet near the edge of the galaxy. The parents would tell them stories about the humans who looked harmless but could become monsters when threatened. Are they evil? The children would ask. No, the parents would reply. They are not evil. They are just very, very good at surviving, and they have chosen to let the rest of us survive too, as long as we do not threaten them. The humans returned to Earth and began rebuilding their world. They had paid a terrible price for their freedom, but they had gained something more valuable. They had earned the respect of an entire galaxy. President Carter's final speech was broadcast to every human settlement in space. We tried to be better than our nature, and that was good. But we should never forget what our nature really is. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the species that conquered death itself and reached for the stars. She paused and looked directly into the camera. And if anyone ever tries to make us extinct again, we will remind them why nightmares evolved to look like the things that hunt in the dark. The message was clear to everyone in the galaxy. Humanity had taken its place as the apex predator of known space, not through conquest but through the simple demonstration that they were willing to become monsters to protect their freedom. The age of forced peace was over. The age of earned peace had begun.